Hello, everyone. Welcome to Two Wizards and a Mic, where a couple of old guys talk about Dungeons and Dragons because it's important. And if you don't think so, why are you here? Hello, Andrew. How are you?
Pretty good, Shane. Yeah, how are you doing in our hot summer city?
I have an air conditioner to my right and a big, huge industrial fan to my left, and I am surviving. I haven't actually had too many moments of like, oh, I've got the vapors and falling
Mm.
over and stuff. But there have been days in the last couple of weeks where it's like, I'd rather be in a lake, submerged for hours and
Yeah,
stay cool that way.
yeah. I have a fan right behind me here, and we have a new AC unit that's so big. I'm not sure how we're going to get it upstairs.
I have a neighbor in my building who has one of those contracts for like the BC Hydro, everyone should have aircon kind of thing,
Hmm.
and so I see like 6 dozen of these things go out every day. Like it's insane how many of this he has to install of all
Wow.
kinds. Like ones for like homes and ones for like the portable, mostly the portable ones, but they're bloody heavy. I mean, I have one what I'm thankful is on wheels. Like I can just kind of cart it around and
Right,
not
right.
take it upstairs. Granted, I'm not taking it anywhere other than just on this floor.
One floor. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So your exciting and memorable Kickstarter
Hmm.
finished with a $6.5 million buy-in.
Yes,
Did
we're
you?
making good
Were you happy with
progress.
it?
No, it went pretty well. Yes, it was our first big adventure book. And we have news actually for the two Kickstarters they're running. So the World of
Excellent.
Near Kickstarter, the PDF is finished and has been sent out to most of the backers.
Very
And what
cool.
we did was we gave them a bonus. We gave them a bonus of about 60 pages in the PDF.
Nice. Nice.
Um, and then the printed version, the first copy should be coming to the office here probably in 2 or 3 weeks, hopefully just 2 weeks. And then I'll get to see what it looks like in print. And that's a whole other, kind of experience. And we'll see if things look like what we wanted, because just looking at the PDF, you can't really tell. Um, yeah, so that's exciting because that means printed books for the backers. I would think the latest they would start to go out would be September. And
Very cool.
if you still want to pre-order that World of Mir, it's a large world book. Um, and it contains our full campaign setting, 9 continents and everything you can imagine, factions and history and detail on all the settlements. And if you want to pre-order that, we'll put the link below. It'll probably go on sale for the public in September as well. And as far as the PDF anyway, the printed version I'll have to see. And if you pre-order it now, you'll get a better price, especially if you pre-order the printed version. And
Yeah.
the second Kickstarter, as you mentioned, was the adventure book. Our first one is Rise of the Mushroom King. And that actually is pretty exciting too, because we finished the first third of it and we've sent that out to the backers. And I'm just finishing editing the final manuscript for the whole book. And Travis has got a bit of art to do. Vouter is finishing the last 4 maps. And I would expect the PDF for that will, it should be done by the end of August, I would expect.
Cool.
So that's much sooner than that's sooner than our schedule. And we also have made one change where we were thinking of having color cover and then color insides. And then we thought, oh, let's mix color images in black and white because the maps are in black and white. And now we've
Okay.
decided, hey, let's go really old school. where in the old D&D modules, the covers were in color, but all of the inside was black and white as far as the art and maps. And I think it
Yep.
looks really good. And that's actually what the backers said during the Kickstarter. Most of that, all of the interior art that had been finished by Travis was only in black and white. And when people saw that, they went, actually, well, not everybody, but most of the people who commented, they said, actually, we prefer to have, we'd like that better. And I do like the look. It has a very, yeah, I think black and white art is underrated often. Um,
I totally agree.
so I think
Like,
it
yeah.
looks really good. And I love the adventure. I'm really trying to make it so that I give the DMs like tons of options. So one of the coolest things is that you can run it at low level, mid level, or high level. So
Nice.
there's options for monsters and treasure to do that. And then there's lots of options in the adventure of like, if you love combat, there's combat options. If you love role play, there's interesting characters and interesting situations. And there's a lot at stake as the adventure goes on. It's not just kill monster, find treasure. There's a lot of things you have to deal with and mysteries you have to figure out. And then as I've mentioned before, there's this diabolical optional ending, which I which I would suggest that every DM use. But I know that it might be too much for some people, so I've called it an optional ending. Um,
Nice.
yeah, and then we have tons of bonuses like encounter tables, a menu for the tavern, um, tables to roll characteristics for the NPCs that they meet, and um, 2 pages of magic items, 2 pages of new spells.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, I think it's really really good. You get a lot for your dollar for sure. And so those adventure books, our plan is to make 72-page adventure books. We were just going to do soft cover, but a bunch of people still wanted hardcover, so now we've given that as an option. So if you want to pre-order that, the adventure book, we'll put that link below as well. And that adventure book, if you pre-order it, it'll also show our online store where we have a whole bunch of deals. Um, yeah, and then the other place to look for deals, if you are interested in our PDFs, I'll put that link below too. Drive-through is having their Christmas in July sale. It just started today,
Nice.
and there's huge savings there. Everything's being marked down on drive-through. So there's lots going on. And the other thing is we have our third book accepted into the libraries here on the North Shore.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Very, very cool.
yeah. So Monsters of the Wilderness joins Monsters of the Feyland and Monsters of the City in the North Vancouver and the West Vancouver libraries this fall.
I'm curious, do they give you any stats or can you request how many times has this book been taken out? I
Yeah,
wonder. Like that would be kind of awesome to know.
yeah, yeah. My family joked about that they were going to keep calling and putting them on hold. Um, And I did a couple of times. I did go. I went to initially I went to go see when the first book got in, and I just wanted to see it in the library. And I took photos um, and then when I went the last couple of times to look at it, because they're at multiple branches, there were none there. They were out, so that was a good sign.
Nice.
Um, yeah, but you do have to give them copies which you're never going to see again. So but it's
Which
good.
I'm okay with. I mean, that's
Yeah,
totally fine. I mean, it
yeah.
is it's kind of cool to be able to see those kinds of things. Like I went looking for my books ages ago.
Hmm.
Found a copy that was available at a Victoria library. I probably told this story already, but went and signed it. Showed them my idea, like I authored this thing. So
Wow.
um, it was pretty nice, and so they put a little signed by the author kind of sticker.
Nice.
Um, I'm actually very curious. I want to look this up right now. Let's see.
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know your book was in the library. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, a couple of them are. I've not really gone hunting for them, but except for that one time. But essentially, yeah, it's just kind of fun. And I think I took a
Yeah,
photograph. I saw a couple of the books in a bookstore once. Just I happened to walk by, and I'm like, oh hey, that I did that. I'll take a photo, make myself feel all important. But overall, I mean, it's just kind of fun. Um, but overall, you just have to take the little wins, man. The little wins are so important. And if you don't do that, what's the point of making them? I mean, come on. I mean, I'm sure you have like the gold-plated copies that are up on your shelf. I did hardcover, but really hardcover. That'd be kind of fun.
yeah,
Signed by the author, $6,000. No, actually more than that. But today we want to talk about some stuff. What are we
yes.
talking about?
We're talking about building monsters.
Building. I mean, I suspect that's really easy, right? You can just do it in 5-10 minutes. It doesn't really require a lot of effort, really.
It's not that hard. And the funny thing, like a lot of things in the book and in the rules, they overcomplicate it. It's way easier and more simple. So
Right.
there is a mechanical version of how to do this. Um, and it's
Okay.
in the Dungeon Master's Guide on page 270, 273 is where it starts. And there's a whole section on these are the steps of how you build a monster, you make a monster. And, this is sort of the calculation you might want to go through. And that is one option. But
Right.
it's not a perfect um, there's not really a perfect way to do it, and there were mistakes. Like there's a few monsters that they've got wrong in the core rules. The most obvious one, which a lot of dungeon masters know about, is the shadow. So the shadow creature in the main monster manual, they only have it listed as a challenge rating 1/2. So that's the same as like an orc, um, a deep gnome, a basic crocodile, a basic black bear, and that is completely wrong because the shadow is at least challenge rating 2, I would say. Um,
Right.
because it can actually it drains strength from characters, and if they get to 0, they die. So
Whoops.
it is actually quite a deadly creature. I would say at least challenge rating 2, if not 3. And there are mistakes that the in the basic game, but for the most part, the CRs are pretty close and the monsters are fairly balanced. But this
Right.
idea that there's really a formula, there is actually a formula at Wizards of the Coast, which they don't give to anybody, which is sort of a mathematical formula that helps them figure it out. But again, it's not perfect because there are many, as we'll talk about briefly, there are many factors you have to consider. So the biggest thing I would say is skip that whole rules. These are the way you do it. But there are
Right.
useful tables in this section that I would use. Um, but the most important thing about a monster is balancing the challenge rating, the CR. Um, and you can do that in a number of ways, and you don't need to follow all their rules. So, what I would do um, first is I would consider that usually what the reasons you want a monster are that there's a setting that you want a monster for. Maybe
Right.
the players have gone to an icy realm and you need some kind of snow monster, right? Or or there's a story you love, like Shane love, and actually both of us love the Indiana Jones movies. Maybe
Yep.
there's something in there that you want to include, right? Or there's a mythology that you're really interested in, drawn to, that you want to make a monster from, right? Or there's a name you like a few of our monsters I just made because of the name, like the Doubt Trout. Um, there's a number. but it doesn't happen that much, but it happens once in a while. There's a name, and then I make the monster from the name. I have, that's my starting point. Um, so the basics to consider really are the size of the monster, because if it's tiny, its hit dice are D4. If it's small, D6, medium D8, large D10, huge D12, and then massive gargantuan D20. And that impacts the hit dice. So you want to figure that out. You want to figure out what's the size and what's an appropriate hit dice, and that will give you the hit points. And again, just like a character, you get a bonus with your constitution onto every hit dice, right?
Right, right.
And then how many attacks does a monster get? Because if they get more than one, that increases their challenge quite a bit.
Right.
You'll see that most low-level monsters just have one attack for the first few challenge rating levels. And the total damage is important, right? How much damage can the monster do? And that also includes if, say, a monster could petrify one of the player characters and get them out of combat for a round. That's like doing full damage or a massive amount of damage to a character because you've got them out of the action. So,
Right.
or casting hold person on a character. So anything that does damage or takes a turn away from a character, and you want to consider how much total damage can this creature do when you're balancing its challenge rating. The extras are things like monster type. The type is just really a definition. It doesn't really matter for the most part. Sometimes it comes with some features, but the fact that something's a fiend or undead is usually just defining the monster. It's not mechanically important, right?
Right.
Then abilities, skills are somewhat important. Immunities and resistances are definitely important, but not like the top, but important. Spells can be important, and other features the creature has. So,
What about
yeah,
experience points? I've always often wondered how, because I have a reasonable idea of how challenge ratings are established, but
right,
experience points, because I know that in some games that's really really important.
right.
Um, but I know that in others well, I'm not going to say it's not important, but it's often assumed that if you're able to beat this kind of creature at this challenge rating, therefore the points you get are going to be that. But how are those calculated for to establish any creature that you've created? You've balanced them out. You're like, okay, this is going to be this challenge rating,
Right.
but the experience point count, is there a rule around that?
Yeah. So the next page on the Dungeon Master's Guide, after, well, it's page 275. It's 2 pages after that section begins. There's a great
Right.
table that shows every CR is connected to an XP amount, and that's in the monster manual as well. So each
Okay,
monster
that
has
makes
an
sense.
Yeah, so each monster has that. And then when that's why I say the CR is so important. And that's like the most important thing. Because if you have that, you have the XP. And then I'd say
Right.
most groups still use XP from the monsters for leveling up. But a number now use milestones instead, or people use a combination. Um,
Right.
so yeah, that's why the CR is so important. In general, there's two ways of building the monster. You can build it from a template, from a pre-existing monster, or you can build it from scratch, which is much more challenging.
Right.
So the example I would show from a template is to show our armored centaur that we have from the Monsters of the Phaland book. All right,
Right
so
on.
I'm going to bring up the original centaur. And what I wanted to do was make him a bit tougher and make a warrior version, because the basic centaur in the monster manual, page 38, the basic one is CR2, which is for a low level character, it's a good challenge, but it could be tougher, right? So I've made here a CR4 version. So
Right. Okay.
what I did was I took the basic Centaur. So if you look at their armor class, this new warrior version is 17 because the basic was only 12. So they actually have a
Oh.
pretty weak, yeah, because they have no armor. So I gave them some
Okay.
armor. I increased their hit points by about 20 or so. I slightly changed the ability scores. I made him slightly stronger, a bit more agile because he's a warrior, and I gave him. I didn't. I kept the charge because that's a good feature. They can charge people, but I kept the charge, and I made that a little bit tougher because again he's warrior, and I wanted to make the CR a bit tougher. And then the weapon, I gave him a long sword, which
Okay.
actually it basically the damage is not that different with the long sword, but
Right.
the main thing that changed was the armor class and the parry ability. So the parry ability makes the armor class even tougher, and that's really why I moved him up 2 levels. And looking back, he maybe even could be moved to CR5, but CR4 is a good place for him too. Maybe CR5, but I think 4 is pretty good.
Right.
So that is like taking a basic version of a monster, using it as a template, and just building on it a bit and tweaking it and making something a bit different. In this case, tougher with a different weapon and different armor.
Nope. That's cool. I
So
like
that
the changes you've made. Is useful mounts in the original as well, or is that new?
sorry, the which
The useful mounts.
oh, the fact that they're willing to be mounts for good line creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah, I added that. I'm pretty sure that it says that it doesn't.
I was just curious because I actually had not noticed that before because I've been through this book a couple times, but that is actually kind of a really useful thing, and to me, it gives you a lot of options for storytelling.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan of mounts. I kind of think they're underutilized. They're a very basic, kind of tactical thing to have, and you can have relationships between the mount and the character.
Yeah.
They don't actually have anything about that on the basic Centaur. They don't say anything about it, but I like that, and
Okay.
partly that's inspired by Harry Potter when the centaurs in that story they refuse to have anybody ride them, but one of
Yeah.
them, spoiler alert, one of them lets Harry ride him to safety. Um, so you like that, eh?
I like that. That's. But I do remember that moment from. I think that was that the first film?
Yeah, it's in the first
Yeah,
book.
that was
Yeah,
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 or the first.
yeah. In case
Sorry,
somebody hasn't
the
read
first
the
book.
most famous book in the world that came out 20 years ago or whatever, right?
I do recall. I remember reading that back in the day.
Yeah. So that's the simplest way to make a monster. You take a basic monster that's already there and you just tweak it a bit, and then I'll show you some tricks of how to balance that CR, what to look for. But again, and not all of our monsters are like this. But we've done this a few times where we've taken, the basic blueprint template of a creature and then built on it.
Nice.
So that's one way, and that's the easiest way to do it. The harder way is to do it from scratch. And when you do that, you do need to look at, again, I pointed out the size that determines the hit points.
Right.
Um, Alignment obviously is important in the morality of the creature, and some of their special features, like the immunities and the resistances. So immunity means that that type of attack or condition is you cannot use it against this creature, and resistance means the creature gets half the damage that they normally would get,
Yeah,
including.
because I remember one time I was a druid and I did that. Oh my lord, what's that cantrip? The one that turns you into a little monster for a brief moment. And I think you can suddenly spit acid or no poison. And I remember doing that quite often during one of the adventures, and it worked out great. I was able to get a little bit of damage in, and then it benefited if I was successful in poisoning people. And but then I did it to a creature. I've forgotten which creature, but all I heard after that was, "Oh yeah, you scratch him, and but the poison doesn't do anything."
Right,
And
right.
I thought,
Yeah,
"Damn it, it's immune!" Oh,
yeah,
so my whole plan of attack had kind of went out the window after that. But yeah,
yeah.
and it's
It's
always a
important.
nice surprise.
Yeah, it's important, and it's nice to give the monsters variety and have them make sense in their setting and what they are. And um,
Exactly.
so let's look at some monsters to talk about some factors in building from scratch, and again we'll start to talk about how we can balance that CR as well.
Okay. Which one
So
would you like to see?
you can bring up whichever one, and then I'll just go with it.
All
All
right,
right,
Miss Giant.
Miss Giant. Okay, so this is in the Phelan book. I think today's examples, yeah, they're all from Phelan. So the one, I suddenly started to hear a fan.
On my end or your end?
I think it must be your end. Yeah. Oh, there you
All right,
go.
I will. You were saying.
So I was saying yes. Okay, so let's look just through the stat block fairly quickly in terms of how we would do this by scratch. So the Mist Giant, it's a huge giant, which means it's 20 by 20 by 20. And that means that its hit dice are going to be D12. And then we've got its alignment there. And then armor class. Now, this is the cheat code. So normal armor class works like characters. So if you have no armor, that's a base 10. And if you do have armor, then it builds on that. Like if you have studded leather, then it moves up to 12, for example. And if you have if you have the mage armor spell, then it moves your armor up by 3. And you can put that in here if you use mage armor. The cheat code is to do what I did here. You can just write in brackets after the armor class, natural armor. And that just means that the creature has this natural armor ability, like because of its hide or maybe scales, just the way it's built, right? And I'm in this case, I figured this giant is like, it's got a very, very tough hide. Um, and I gave him a pretty decent armor class. Speed can vary. It's a good thing to look at other monsters to get an example for how they can move. In this case, there's some giants that are similar that can move the same speed. And then as well, the abilities, take a look at another giant and kind of get an idea of what you want. In this case, this guy has not a lot of charisma. He's brighter than most giants. Most giants aren't very smart. And that comes into the fact, that he's also fairly wise, and he uses his wisdom for magic. He has magic, so that's very rare for giants. Um, you can look for saving throws. That's for more powerful creatures. Most monsters don't have those. Skills, you can look at same as a character, the ones that make sense. Passive perception is the same as the character, as is language. And then for like things like keen smell, again, look at other giants for what abilities they might have, other features. I gave him the special Lost in the Mist ability, where I've always loved the scene believe it or not, Phantom Menace, I think, when the Gungan army is moving through the swamp. And I
Oh yeah,
and
and they kind of appear.
yeah, and they appear out of the mist. And I always love that idea of a larger creature that was able to come through the mists. And so I gave that ability to this giant. And he happens to live in a part of Feyland where there is a lot of mist and clouds, and so he can keep hidden. I gave him magic resistance because again he's more of a Fey giant in many ways. And then his ability is as far as attacking. Um, I gave him a similar giant like he doesn't have a weapon. Again, he uses magic, so I thought, hey, he doesn't need a weapon. And then the spells are things that are to do with wind and the elements and connected to nature, which kind of goes together with the whole idea of what he is. So that's some quick examples of what to look for there. Um, and later, I'll just point out his CR is 12. I'll show you how I got that. I'll talk about it later of why that's, and the basic way to do it is to look at other examples of a creature like this. All right, so let's move to another one here. So the lake gnome. So he is a tiny fey gnome, again from Monsters of Feyland, very low CR. It's half, which is the same as an orc. And an orc would be much tougher because their armor class is better. They have some armor. They have some hide armor usually. Their hit points are a bit better than that. Um, and they definitely can do more damage. If you look down, what does its attack do? I gave him a dagger. It does 1 damage because this is a dagger for I believe he's tiny, right? If you go up again, sorry, we're going back and forth a bit here, but I think he's tiny. Is he tiny? Yeah. So he's tiny. So he's like the size of a cat, right? In D&D terms. Okay. Or smaller, maybe smaller than that. And so his dagger is so small, you can't even give it the regular 1d4. It's a 1. Just a 1. Okay. So now you might say, in, how in Mir is this creature a 1/2 CR when an orc is obviously tougher? Well, then you have to look at what else is here. So he has magic resistance. That means he gets advantage on saving throws against spells and magical effects. That's a huge deal. That would send him at least 1 CR rating higher, at least 1. He has some magic and especially he can escape with Pass Without Trace. So that gives a little boost to the CR. And then if you look at the very bottom, it says Deep Knowledge. Now, this is the reason why he goes up another notch, is because they have this ability that if a creature comes into contact with them, they get violently ill, and if they fail their save, and they get violently ill, they start hallucinating, and this can happen up to a minute. So a character is incapacitated for a minute. That's a big deal. So even though he's quite weak, he has like really very little hit points, terrible armor class. He can do 1 damage. Because he can do this, that's going to take his CR up at least a couple of levels, maybe even 3 levels into what it would be. And the cool part about it, if you're a character and that happens to you, do you see what happens?
Well, yeah,
If that happens, your wisdom score goes up 1 permanently.
which is
It's
incredibly cool and is not to be sneezed at because,
no,
especially when you've had a character that's had some sort of, like they've been hit with something else that reduces that. So this kind of stuff is kind of fun to seek out, actually.
right. Yeah. So that's another reason why his CR is better than what it would appear at first, because he really can have an impact in the world. And this idea of this deep knowledge is that he's got this profound, deep knowledge of nature and of existence, really, as well, that it affects the characters so much that they're permanently changed.
That is very, very interesting. I like that a lot.
All right. So let's look at another monster.
All right, let's go to the shadowy tree,
All right. So
which has really
this,
cool art, in my opinion. But there you
yeah,
go.
yeah, 100%. I love what Travis did there. So this one is another one really built from a template, in many ways built from the template of the Treant, and then
Right,
changed here and there. Um, it's an evil tree. Um, it has been given some immunities, quite a few, and magic resistance. Again, this is a tree that could be in Feyland, is in Feyland, but also could be in the material world. And so if
right.
you just scroll down a bit, so CR12, and it can bite. It can actually attack with his branches. So there's another Harry Potter inspiration. And the fact that
Well,
it,
is it what's that tree called? It's called like the Whomping Willow or something.
yeah, the Whomping Willow, yeah,
And I love
yeah.
the Paxawallop. Oh, sorry, continue. Just wanted a fanboy
So
there for a minute.
yeah, so it's inspired by the Whomping Willow and a Treant. And if I just look at a Treant really quickly here, a Treant is only challenge rating 9. So this
Oh,
guy gets a bonus because um, it has more hit points, very likely. It has magic resistance, and it's a bit tougher. It has some more abilities that the Treant doesn't have, like swallowing creature underneath it into the ground. Again, that comes from Whomping Willow. So here's another example of going from the template.
right.
And then we have one last one, the Brownie.
Uh, oh, did you send me that? Hang on.
Oh, didn't I send you? Oh,
What are you
oh
talking about? It was right here the whole time.
no. Interesting that the Fey creature might not show up.
It's exactly correct. It
All
was
right.
hiding.
So this one I did use. So there are some very low level Fey creatures in the monster manual. There's a sprite and a pixie. So this one is similar to those. So that gave me a good idea of how to balance him. And then I gave him a few little extras here and there. He's small, he's not tiny. So he gets D6 for hit points. I gave him leather armor. And that is actually, oh no, that's correct. I thought we'd made a mistake with the math. That's correct. So he has leather armor, which is 11, and then his dexterity is +3, so that's 14 for his armor class. He's got a couple of spells, but they're not attack spells, but they're the kind of things that could possibly help the characters because he's a good creature. And then there's a cool kind of, if you scroll down here, there's some cool little effects. They're very nervous and sensitive creatures, so they can actually play dead.
Oh,
Um, and to most creatures, they do such a good job that they believe that they are, and they just leave them alone. Um, they can't do a ton of damage, but it's not too bad. Like potentially with their short sword, they could do 9 damage if they rolled really well. So so we gave them a half. So again, if you think of an orc, they're
right.
they're actually not that far off. Like an orc does more damage, but the armor classes are similar. The hit points are not too far, I think. But the mimic ability, the fact that it can do good berry, which is can do healing, so that gives it a little bit of a boost and puts them on par with an orc, in my mind,
No,
or even
that sounds good to me.
even a black bear. Like you've got to consider like things that really a lot of people overlook is, can the creature escape? Like, can they fly? Can they teleport? Can they turn invisible? Can they run away? Like, are they really fast? Um, if they have those abilities, all of those kind of things are going to move the CR up a bit, right?
Right.
And then the multiple attacks too, because as you know, playing many times, Shane, if a creature just has one attack, it's much less of a problem than when a creature's attacking like 3, 4, 5 times.
Which is always an exciting adventure when you're getting attacked by something you can't hit.
Yeah.
So right away it becomes far more dangerous just for that particular reality. Um, I like this. I kind of like the brownie. I don't. Did I show the photo here or the photo, the image, the photograph?
Yeah. And I love Travis always adds extras, right? So he added that fungi, he added that ant, and he added the eyes and the tree. Like he always puts more in there than I've asked in the description.
Which is very cool. I like that entirely because you have again more options, far more options than I think some creatures are.
Yeah,
I like it.
exactly. All right, the last two things I want to mention are about this important CR balance. Now, there's two ways in general to balance. The first way is the chart that Shane just put up, and there is the greatest chart in the whole book, page 274. This one will show you here's the CR, here's what the proficiency bonus could be. Oh,
Oh,
so
I've
that's the
always
XP. That's
I
the XP.
switched. Sorry.
No worries. That's the XP chart, which is on the next page. That's important. This one shows you the armor class they should be about, the hit points average, the attack bonus, the damage, total damage, and then their saving throw. So what you do is you look at this and then you think factor in, do they have less hit points than this chart shows? Is their armor class more? Can they fly? Do they have immunities? Do they use magic? That's attack magic. Can they escape? You factor all those things in. And using this and using the tables on page 306 in the the Dungeon Master's Guide, that shows you all the monsters in the monster manual by their challenge rating. And you look through there,
Yes.
you look at other monsters of that challenge rating, and you go, does that make sense? Right? And
Right.
like the brownie, like originally you would probably start out pretty low around challenge rating 1/8, and then you'd go, okay, but he can do okay damage compared to those creatures. Let's move him up one more, and his armor class is not too bad. Like his armor class for 1/8 should be 13. It shows there, so his is actually better. His is 14. And
All right.
then
Okay.
you consider the mimic death part, that he can just play dead and people can ignore him, and he can. That's another way really of escaping. I would
Right.
move him up a whole challenge rating for that, and then that's why I give him 1/2. Even though it says hit points 50 to 70, I still would put him there because he has that escape ability, and he's got a bit of magic to heal, and his armor class is slightly better than the one given, and the damage is better. Like the damage for 1/8 is 2 to 3 hit points damage. This brownie could potentially do 9, which is challenge rating 1. So
That
these
is
are the
actually
ways.
very important to recognize.
Yeah. So these are the ways you can try to get a balance that makes sense. Look at that great chart and look at other examples and figure out, where's the best balance. And remember, there's no right answer really. Um, the maker of the game has made mistakes with this before. Um, I know there's some third party companies that people complain like almost their entire monster book is off. Hopefully that's not us. Um, we do spend a lot of time trying to be as accurate as possible. But like I said, there's not really 100% a right answer, but there are ways to get close, I think.
Oh, I agree. I mean, these are. I mean, this is pretty well laid out because this answers like any questions I've ever had. And I'm pretty sure I've looked at this table before, but it has been quite some time.
Right.
Because I mean, ultimately, it's when you're trying to do something that the players don't normally do. Like these are directed, of course, at DMs and making sure that they have all the resources they need.
Right.
So, yeah, this is actually very cool.
Well, actually, I'll give you another good example just to show how the challenge ratings can change. So let's look at like an archmage. Okay, so um, actually, even let's just look at the mage. So a mage is a ninth level wizard, and it's challenge rating 6. Okay, so it's
Okay.
given challenge rating 6. So a ninth level wizard, that's 9 levels times a D6 hit points plus his constitution. So maximum, they could probably have around 50 hit points or so, probably more like 40. Okay. The hit
Right.
points it says here on the chart for challenge rating 6, 146 to 160.
Yeah.
So the reason why the mage is moved up there is because of their spells, right? So a mage uh, who is a ninth level wizard, he can cast. Oh, I'm hearing your fan again. So a ninth level wizard, a mage in the monster manual, 40 hit points, but an armor class 12, armor class 15 with mage armor, but they can cast Cone of Cold, Greater Invisibility, Ice Storm, Fireball. They could cast Fireball 3 times. Um, Misty Misty Step, they can escape, right? Suggestion, Magic Missile, they could cast 4 times. Shield, they could cast 3 or 4 times. Firebolt, they can cast every time. It's a cantrip. So that's why the mage has moved up so far, because 40 hit points is down in 1/4 challenge rating.
Which does not match the amount of power that that particular creature would have, because that to me
Exactly.
is so out
So
of balance. Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, so he's moved up, and you might even argue maybe he needs to be up slightly higher. Um, but that's the kind of thing you have to look at.
Yeah. Oh, good
And if
lord.
you do have a creature that casts magic, then you should look at other creatures that cast magic that are somewhat similar. Um, the ones that don't use magic, this table is much easier to use. And then, like I said, other major factors: immunities, flying. Um, can they escape? That's really gonna.
Yeah.
And how much is the total damage?
So overall, with that other table, the experience points per challenge rating,
Right.
does this, I'm assuming this gets factored into the creatures that you've made. So you basically look at the challenge rating and go, nah, that's going to be X. Because I know that you've definitely been doing that, because uh, some of the creatures you were showing actually have a much higher uh, experience rating for their challenge level.
No, actually, the CR has to match the experience points.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So that's again why the CR balance is so important, because it's tied directly to the XP. So yeah, so it works through the CR.
So I'm looking at the lake gnome,
Right,
and let's see. So I'm pretending I'm a DM here.
right.
Okay, so I got that. So challenge rating of half. So go over here. Okay, so it's 100 experience. All right, cool. Oh, yeah, they got some resistance here. They got some. Oh, what's this deep knowledge thing? Oh, okay. Oh, wow, this thing is gonna kick some ass. All right, cool. Imagine finding a group of these guys. Like, holy heck. Oh, only one piercing damage. Oh, but if there's 5 of these guys. So yeah, I kind of and scene, and that was me showing everybody how a DM would be using this particular information to
Right.
create a thing.
Well,
That's so
if
cool.
you do DM for a long time, or you read the books for a long time, after a while, you will look at you'll look at a monster, and you'll go, or a new monster you've created, or one you from another book, or third party publisher, and you'll look and you'll go, yeah, that's you'll the XP and the CR are synonymous. So you'll go, that's that's they say that's a CR3. That's 700 um, experience points. Like that doesn't that doesn't work. It's tougher than that. And then I definitely would go back. And I have with our errata. There's a few
Right.
monsters. I think our underworld book is where we have a little bit more of errata to deal with, a few mistakes, and there's a few CRs there I would tweak, which we have, and you can get that page if you email us, and it actually comes with the download. It comes with the download on drive-through, but I actually put it on our website too. So when you download the PDF, you get the errata, and really there's only some errata for Phaland and the Underworld book. The other books, you're talking, I think, one or two things in each book. They're very minor,
Right.
um, minor errors. The dungeon book, it might just be one spelling error. I don't even know if there's a mechanical error in there. So we've got better over time. Um, but the idea that you have to go through that formula and that what's laid out in the Dungeon Master's Guide, it's much easier than that. The most important thing is using other monsters as an example and using that chart. Their whole system that they go through, that's going, it's overthinking it
Right.
as
Uh, I
usual.
have a, I have a question that I have always wanted to ask. What is the first creature that you created? Like completely an original creature.
Hmm, that's a good question. Um, I don't remember doing it when I was playing when I started playing with first edition as a kid and a teenager. I don't think I met any monsters, but when I came back to fifth edition, probably the first creature was the Frog Witch.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, and
Like
originally
she's a
she was the sort
dynamite
of
character.
she sorry.
She's a dynamite character. Like we've encountered her a couple times, and it's
Yeah,
always a challenge to like not die.
well, it's funny because she started out as an ally. She started out as a sort of chaotic neutral, more human-like witch way at the beginning. Um, Actually, with the original group that I worked with, even before West of the Wood, she was there. And then over time, I decided to make this creature that was more frog-like than human in many ways, and more of a fey creature, and move her into the Feyland. Although she does move around, she does come to the material world,
Right.
and she was part of that realization I had after the first book, when I had about half a dozen or a dozen creatures that I thought were a bit silly or over the top. And I didn't know if I should put them in the book, like the Frog Witch and the Doubt Trout and the Rain Man um, and the Dream Dragon. And what happened was all of those creatures were ones that people loved. They're the favorites in the book.
Nice.
So I learned, if I have a creative idea of doing something new, um, do it. Go for, like, I heard this really good advice when I first came back to fifth edition. It was one of the original people who made fifth edition, who is gone, unfortunately, because the original version and rules are so good. Um, and he said, if you have a good idea, I think it was one of those people. He said, if you have a good idea as a DM, use it. You're going to have another good idea. And he's
Yeah.
right. Like, usually, for me, he's right. Like, that more other things come up, right? You're inspired by new ideas. So when I have an idea for a creature, and when I was doing the monster books, I was just like, let's go for it. And I did that more and more, so that especially the last two books, um, or the last, no, I'd say actually, yeah, maybe the last four books. Whenever I had this crazy idea of, whoa, that'd be wild to have something like this, I just go for it. It's in. Like, let's do it. And Yeah, and almost all those creatures, those are the ones that people have responded to the most, as opposed to ones that are closer to a template of a creature that's already in play, and we've tweaked them
Right.
and made some changes. Yeah, and I
Well,
would also say,
I think it's an art form to do this kind of work, to like, be able to look through these types of fantasy creatures and be able to actually create them in a balanced way, because I can see a lot of people screwing that up, like just because they're excited about the I'm gonna make a this that the
right,
attack nose, and it's gonna have 40 arms, and
right,
shoots fire out of its nostrils,
right,
but never really considering sort of how much damage these creatures could do to low level players especially.
right. Well, I mean, I remember how much fun, like, it's not the most important thing. Like, I remember when I started as a kid playing D&D when I was 9, and all the people I played with were 9. I look back now at the rules of the first edition and I go, what, like, we were doing our own thing. Like, because we like we thought we were following the rules, and probably for the most part we were, but as long as you're having fun, you know, that's
Yeah.
that's the most important thing. And saying that, you also don't want to kill your characters, with a monster who's not balanced, or make it so easy that they just run right over them.
Or just run into the doubt trout so your character doesn't do anything and gets murdered by something else,
Yeah.
which I was
Yeah.
very concerned about the first time I encountered the doubt trout.
Yes. Yeah, I think you guys were on pins and needles the whole time you were in Feyland.
Yeah, we were not happy, especially what was the I don't think that was Phelan when we got attacked by the uh what was that creature that we just could not kill? We kept
Oh yeah. I think you're talking about the giant basilisk.
yeah, because it was brutal. Like it was one of those things that we were just not prepared for. And you're like, "So, anyway, the place you wandered into."
Yeah. Yeah, you were in some kind of building and you found an entrance or a cave or something that led underneath the building into tunnels, huge tunnels and caverns. And the basilisk in the basic monster manual is very underwhelming and doesn't suit the basilisk from mythology.
Right.
So I made one that is nasty. That's in Phaland. And you guys were 18th, 17th or 18th level, and you ran for your lives.
Yeah, no, we did. I recall not sticking around at all. Like I think
Yeah.
we did 2 or 3 rounds and then realized that we were outmatched and there was just no way for us to do anything. So it was I think it was one of the rare moments where the party is like, let's get the hell out of here because this is not we're gonna die.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think that should happen all the time, and it usually happens more at lower levels. But I don't think if a game is well balanced, it should happen that much. And
Yeah.
with our group, it hasn't. You guys haven't run for your lives that many times, but it has
Very,
happened.
very rarely, but it has
Yeah,
happened.
yeah,
And especially, I mean, I think maybe 1 or 2 of those times, like, I think we're actually going in the wrong direction. Maybe we should go back and go the other way. So, I mean, that's kind of an honest, hey, do we really need to fight this thing? Where, yeah, the other one was,
yeah. The
it'll
funny
be a
thing
total
about
party kill if we stick around.
right, the funny thing about the basilisk is usually you guys consider the consequences later, and you're worried about the world and the people, and that one you just left him there and ran for your lives. Like you did. I'm
Well,
pretty
we
sure
might come back.
you never like there was you were allies with the queen of the land at that point. You'd actually helped her regain her throne, and
Right.
you never went to her or the authorities and said, by the way.
Good luck with all of that.
Yeah, maybe you wanted to forget about it. Maybe you just wanted to forget about it.
Traumatized characters. We didn't know. We're
Yeah,
not doing that again. The
basilisk.
dice, I keep rolling it so that my character does the thing, but it just won't do it.
Yeah, That's what the B. That's it. Should be BTSD with the basilisk instead of.
Oh God, basilisk. Oh God. It's so accurate though. I mean, come on. There's just no way around it.
Oh, that thing is. Yeah,
It
yeah. We
it
had,
was
once in a
mean.
while we put a monster like that in the books just so that DMs have something that for high level characters, um, because there's not a lot of creatures like that. But it's nice to
Yeah.
have that in your back pocket. Um, yeah.
On that note, terrified players running away from creatures that Andrew has made. Uh, how else can you describe it other than buy the books? Because you will not be disappointed. Um, and of course, the Kickstarter that just finished and the previous one to that are pretty much almost out the door. The first one, not the second. But yeah, I
Well,
recommend
actually,
supporting.
I was just going to say the adventure book. Sorry to interrupt you. The adventure book, the PDF, well, it won't be that long. It
Okay.
could be a month and a half, could be less. It's actually these smaller adventures. One of the reasons we're doing them is that we're going to be able to make them faster. Um,
Yeah.
Smaller book, obviously, and we already have about a dozen like sketched out. So
Nice.
yeah.
That's very, very cool. Um, on that note, everyone, I am certainly hoping you will support small publishers like Cawood Publishing and the World of Mir. And also, don't forget to like, subscribe, do all the things for this show because we would love it if you did. Because if you don't, we will find you. And we'll take away all your D&D books and you won't be able to play the game at all. Because we'll have them. But seriously, thank you for supporting the show and all that kind of stuff. So keep doing it and do it more and tell all your friends, because otherwise we will be sad or something. Who knows? Anyway, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Shane. Later.